Welcome to Preps Plus Extra. How you doing? I'm Mark Stewart, Preps editor of the Journal Sentinel. Joining me as always, J.R. Radcliffe, sports editor of Now Newspapers. How you doing this week?
I'm doing great. Couple weeks away from Christmas. A lot of good prep basketball before that, and just a good time to be a prep sports fan.
Yeah, hey, every time of the year is a great time to be a sports prep sports fan. We're going to go back and talk a little bit about some high school football. Both Now Newspapers and the Journal Sentinel came out with their postseason honors. And JR and I are going to talk a little bit about kind of what goes into, making, the area coach of the year. We both agreed. Alec James from Brookfield East was the player of the year. A lot of choices for the coach of the year. Tell us a little bit about who you picked and why.
Yeah, we had a really very difficult decision-making process because for example, we have Dave Keel of Homestead, who won the Division II state title with a team that probably wasn't supposed to win the state title, quote unquote. They beat a tremendous Waunakee team that had a 48-game winning streak. So that alone, that game alone, even if you didn't take anything else in consideration, is an incredible accomplishment. They also beat an undefeated Green Bay Southwest team in the playoffs. They shared the North Shore Conference title. They did lose to Whitefish Bay, but it was awfully close, and that was their only loss of the year. So that was certainly one of our strongest candidates. We ended up going with Matt Good from Wauwatosa West, who pretty much turned that program around. I mean, they'd won 2 games each of the previous 2 years. He turned them into a 7-1 regular season team. They were in a new Woodland conference that really had a lot of the powerhouses together.
Right.
So it wasn't easy for Tosa West. I really didn't see them finishing anywhere near the front. Their only loss came to Pewaukee. They beat Greendale in overtime. They ended up losing to Greendale in the first round of the playoffs. But that's one of the biggest things we have to deal with is you've got a program in Homestead that's always successful. So there's a certain expectation that they're going to do well. But then again, winning the state title, you can't really expect that from anybody. And then you got a program that you can really gauge how far they've come in 1 year. They were a team that struggled, and then all of a sudden, overnight, in 1 year's time, they were amazing. So we ended up going with Matt Good, but it was a very difficult decision. We had a ton of candidates that could have won that spot.
Right, and the Journal Sentinel's coach of the year was Bill Young from Catholic Memorial. And some of the issues that you talked about in terms of making that decision, I dealt with in making our choice. I mean, obviously, you got Arrowhead coach Greg Malling, undefeated season, great season, great schemes, by him and his staff. Homestead with Dave Keel, Bill Young won a state title. Then you have guys like Jim Teachin at Whitefish Bay, got their team to the semifinals, and really a player or two away maybe from even getting to the finals. To me, what tipped it in Bill Young's favor is, sure you expect Catholic Memorial to really have a good program every year, but to me they're one of those programs that you can almost forget how small a school that is,
right.
And the fact that you have to play your way into the playoffs means that they have to do well in the Classic 8 against those bigger schools even to get to the postseason. So to me, I combined that with the fact that they beat undefeated Wisco, Wisconsin Lutheran, undefeated Pewaukee in the playoffs, and then undefeated Wapaka in the final, and that kind of tipped the scales to me in their favor. So one thing as we're talking. We both have different coaches of the year, but we also have sort of different coverage areas.
Yeah.
I mean, explain a little bit about what's the Now News area?
Well, Now Newspapers covers pretty much everything between Waukesha and Milwaukee, if you can sort of imagine the suburbs. Now, it isn't quite that simple. We go north to Menominee Falls, Germantown, as far north as Mequon, and in the south you'll have teams like Franklin and Oak Creek. Our coverage area, we do serve in a smaller capacity communities like Cudahy and South Milwaukee, but we don't do sports coverage in those papers. So we're kind of all over the map in different levels compared, There are some, we tend to cover the public schools just because we don't have as much manpower or space as we used to have. So there are schools like Thomas More that we used to cover that we don't as much anymore. So it's very difficult to say definitively what our coverage area is. And then I'm also out at Lake Country Newspapers where we cover some of the teams you were just talking about, Arrowhead, Catholic Memorial. We do cover Waukesha and then the Lake Country area, so kind of those suburbs that move a little bit west. We cover Oconomowoc, Mugwanago. So anytime I try to explain to somebody what we cover, it's like, well, let me show you this map. So the Now Newspapers area doesn't cover Bill Young or Greg Malling. So those were two big candidates off the table. You had talked about Tejan, Mike Bartholomew from Oak Creek. I talked about our South area. They went undefeated in the Southeast. That was another guy. Ken Krause in Muskego. We cover Muskego, and they went to the playoffs after losing all their players, every one of them from the previous years. So that's just a sample of some of the teams that we have in our zone.
Yeah. One other quick question on the note of players of the year for football. I guess you can look at it two different ways. I mean, you can either pick the guy who is maybe the most valuable, to their team or whatever they do, or you can pick the guy who is the most dominant at what they do.
Yeah.
What do you lean one way or the other when you pick these?
Yeah, I think we lean more towards the most dominant because I mean Brookfield East obviously had a tremendous year and they got to level 3 of the playoffs, but we could have picked somebody from Homestead. They won a state championship, so they should have a player of that level. This is the type of MVP debate you have every year in every sport. I would even say that there's another level to the most dominant argument because you've got guys who are tremendous college prospects who are going to go to the University of Wisconsin because they're 6'8", they project well. A few years ago, we had a lineman by the name of Eric Brunner out of Greendale, who was a tremendously dominant defensive lineman, much like Alec James. Took Greendale to the state championship game. He was our player of the year. He didn't project as a Division I college player necessarily, but he was truly the best high school player in our coverage zone. So then it becomes, he's not on anybody's radar. He's not going to go to Wisconsin or Minnesota. I mean, he's going to go to a MAC school. But still, you have to say, in our sphere, in the high school sphere, he's the best guy we've got.
Right, and I kind of lean that way as well.
Sure.
I mean, especially this year where I just kind of weighed, a guy like James with someone like a Matt Hubley from Catholic Memorial, who's a two-way, standout, or a Dom Tottarello from Arrowhead, who he practically played everything except offensive line.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's my leaning. I kind of lean toward the more dominant guy that. Maybe a year or two from now, you're going to say, wow, this guy is going to not only do well at high school, but he's going to make an impact at the next level.
Right. Anybody who wants to check out our all-suburban team, by the way, should go visit mycommunitynow.com. We've got the full teams on there, plus my column about our tough Coach of the Year decision. So people can read a lot more about it if they want.
Nice plug there. Well, that wraps up another edition of Preps Plus Extra. For more Preps Plus action, be sure to watch me and Lance Allen every Sunday night on today's TMJ4. Have fun out there.